Welcome to What Nobody Tells You. I'm your host, James Ferrigno. Join me while we explore the truths most people never hear. Welcome to What Nobody Tells You. I'm your host, James Ferrigno, and today on What Nobody Tells You, I'm going to be talking about college and university. So this is by no means a comprehensive guide to college or university. It's not a guide to getting in or everything that you have to do. What it is I have assembled some information that I've learned over my life that are things I wish I had known that nobody told me before I went to college and nobody told me while I was in college. So this is simply information that I have learned and tips and tricks and things that I have learned going to college, things that will make it easier for you, things that will help you not make huge mistakes that'll cost you a lot of time and money. So this is meant to save you time, money, and get you the results that you want, because you don't always get the results that you want from college, and it can be a disappointing experience sometimes and a frustrating one. So I'm trying to spare you some of that difficulty and frustration that you can often get in university because you were not adequately prepared and people did not tell you what was coming, and they just spring it on you as if you should have known, but there was no way you could have known, or at least it's unlikely that you could have known. Hopefully some of these tips and some of my life experience can help you avoid some of the pitfalls and help support you in making it a more positive experience and more successful experience. The beginning of this, I believe this is 40 minutes long or so. I'm not sure the exact time, but the beginning part, I'm going to focus on traditional graduating from high school, going to college. The end part, the last 10 minutes or so, I'm going to focus on community college as a community resource, not as a education to get you to somewhere else, but as just a community resource to be able to use to enrich your life, to become a healthier, happier, more well-rounded person. And that if you are interested in that, if you're someone who's has a couple of degrees already, maybe skip to the end and listen to the last few minutes because it's there, or stick around for it. Some of the things in the beginning could be useful as well, but certainly that last 10 minutes is important for people who maybe want to become healthier, or maybe your gym is too far away or too difficult to get to or not good. There's a lot of different resources available at community colleges, so you can check that out. And I'm going to talk about kind of the philosophy that underlies going to college and whether you want to or not, and then how it works, and a lot of tips and guidelines on how to succeed, how to do well when you're there. So if you're planning on going to college, even in a couple years, it would be good to watch this right now. And if you're already in college, some of the things will still apply. I'm just going to take you from the very beginning through to graduation. To begin with, why are you going to college in the first place? And if you ask someone that, they'll give you answers like, so I can have a career, so that I can make a good income, so that I can become educated, so that I'll know things, so that I can then get a good job afterwards. And all of those are true. But there's one fundamental thing that I've heard people say, but is not, I don't think, emphasized enough usually, and that is the real important reason you're going to college is to meet people and make contacts. That's essentially what it's for. Yes, you will pick up some education on the way, but as you know, most of us forget most of the actual information we learn. Learning to do research and learning to do other things in college, there's a lot of other things we learn. We learn socialization. So there are other things we learn. There are other reasons. But the main reason, the most important one, I think, that isn't focused on a lot, is that it's about meeting people, and then when you graduate, you will have this network of people that you can, have to support you. And that's how you get jobs, essentially. That's how most things are accomplished in life, are through networking, through networks of people, because that's where society is, that's where money is, that's where success lies, in other people, because that's all we're talking about here. There's many different aspects to this, But on a simple level, it's just meeting your professors, meeting your fellow students, and continuing to know them after college. That's very important. If you just have casual relationships and then you graduate and you didn't keep in contact with anybody, then you didn't really get the contacts, and that's really the important thing. And I mean, it's famous that people go to USC Film School so they can get the contacts to get into the film industry, but that's really true everywhere. People go to Ivy League schools. The biggest thing is knowing the people once you get out, because that's how, whether you're starting a business and need investors or, venture capital or connections, or, I mean, it doesn't hurt in life when you have a bunch of people that you know that one's attorney, then you have someone to call if you need advice, legal advice or a recommendation on the legal end. Someone else is a judge. That doesn't hurt. Someone else is a CEO at a corporation. You want to have a network of people, and that's the main thing. So one thing that's also important is, especially if you go into teaching, which I know a lot of people don't plan to do and then end up doing, so I wouldn't rule it out 100%, even if you're not planning on it, is to get to know the professors, because if you end up teaching, they're the ones that can help you. And I found that this happened to me, if you do go into teaching, you can get, and say you get your master's or PhD, you can get a job at the school that you're at, but if you try to move to another school, you won't know anybody there, and you pretty much, unless you're at the very top of your field and you're sought after, which isn't the case for most of us, then you have to know somebody there. And if you don't, then that's not going to happen. So, and I didn't know that. And I moved, and I was not able to get a position because I did not know anybody to the new location I lived at. So, and didn't matter how many colleges there were, I didn't know anybody at any of them. So it's to meet people. So, and that's just for teaching, and for other things, for business, it's even more important. So let's back up a little bit. At the beginning, before you go to college, you need to apply. So, and what is not always made clear to people is that you need to apply more than a year in advance, or 1 year in advance. So I know that a lot of young people get stuck because, oh yeah, I'll apply over here, and then they didn't do it in time. They missed the deadline. So do it a year and a half ahead of time, if you can, if it's not already too late. So, and the other thing is, a lot of people need financial aid. Also needs to be applied for even earlier. So that's going to take a while, and you want at least a year and a half runway on that. So, and if you need financial aid to go to a state school or something, then you need to apply early. And when you apply, your income needs to be a certain threshold. So do that research, look at, it changes. So I can't tell you what it's going to be when you do it, and it's different in different states. But look at what that threshold is and see if you make that threshold, if you're beneath that threshold, because if you're not, you should check first before going through the process of submitting it, because there's no point if you're over. Also, with young people, if you're connected to your parents and your parents have money, then you won't be able to get it most likely. Maybe you could get some loans, but you won't get the grants. So especially if you live with your parents, if you don't live with them and you're kind of disconnected from your parents and you don't really have any connection with them, or you don't see them, then you can get financial aid. So that's something to be aware of. So if you need the financial aid, you need to fall into that category. So apply way ahead of time. As soon as you think of it, really, apply for the financial aid way ahead of time, and apply to the schools way ahead of time. So that's really important. And if you're going to get financial aid, you need to be separated from your parents to get any decent kind of financial aid, anything besides, loans. Um, and then choosing a major. So decide what your goal is first here, right? Well, your goal is to meet people, right? But if you really want to go into a field, I found that, I'll just give you my example, is that I was interested in literature. I was a writer. I was writing film scripts and plays. And so I went into English and got a master's in English and creative writing. Turns out you can only teach that, right? So the degree doesn't prepare you to be a writer, really. So that degree is a communications degree. So, and you can get, that will prepare you for more jobs. So the other doesn't prepare you for anything except teaching. So if you are an English major or something in humanities, be prepared that you can only teach. There's nothing else you can do. If you want to actually get a job somewhere in the film industry or something, communications is the way to go. Get that degree. Don't do the other one. You can do business as well, of course. Or if you're a scientist, this is irrelevant to you. So now courses. So you sign up, you decide, what your major is going to be, and you know what's coming if you're going to take history or English or humanities class, because you know that you're going into teaching because there's nothing else there. So when you start, before the first day of class, when you have pressures, if you want to get good grades, which is important, especially as an undergrad if you're going to go into grad school, and if you want to bump up, if you want to get your PhD, if you want to go to a better school for your second school, for your master's, then you definitely have to get some really good grades. And here's how to do that. Before classes start, professors always have office hours. Go to see the professor and meet them and talk to them and have pretty much as long a conversation with them as you can and get to know them, because when class comes to starting on the first day of class, they will know you and they won't know, the professor will know you and not most of the other students. So it's the students that go meet them and talk to them first that kind of have a leg up, because it's just human nature. People tend to accept and reward people they know. So the better your professor knows you, the better grade you're going to get. There's rare exceptions to this, but in general, this is the case. So you want them to know you and you want them to like you. So throughout the semester, you want to continually go to their office hours and talk to them. If you can, ask personal questions even, and really get to know them as much as you can. And when you're in class, sit in the front, raise your hand all the time, talk all the time. The more you talk, the more vocal you are, the more you have input, the more interested you are in the subject, or seem to be, the better a grade you're going to get. And I found the way to get A's in classes is to really get to know the professor well and participate in class a lot and get them to like you. And another even better way to do that is sometimes professors there's events and outings of different types that people can just do on their own, and you want to be invited to those. So you want to know the organizers of just student organizations well enough that they'll invite you, or just not even organizations, just people, that they'll invite you to things, or that you can go to things, and also things that are sponsored by the school, but things that are independent that the professors may have maybe just doing with some of the students. You want to make sure to be on some of those if you can, because that's when you're really going to get to know people. It's like, in a job when they do team buildings or retreats or things like that, you want social time with the people. That's how you get to know people, is during the social time, not during the work time so much. So make sure to do that. And if you can go to, I don't know, whatever events, or whether it's could be a play, a party, an outing, a picnic, whatever it is, dancing, whatever the thing is, go do that. So then you can get to know those people. So you're at one time building your network of people that you're going to know, and also getting the professor to know you and you to know them, so that you'll also get a better grade. Do your best to build lasting friendships. It might not be easy, it depends on your situation, but just do your best to do that, which is always good in life, but even more important at this juncture. The other thing I would say is, if you can, take a class in research, because it's becoming more and more important to be able to know how to do your own research, which has, it's a skill. It's something that's going to take you some time to learn, and that someone probably needs to teach you. I know that I could do research to a certain point on my own before I had taken a course in it. But once I took the course, it really ramped up my skill level in being able to do that in a way that just simple exploration and logic and following common sense just didn't, give you some real important information. And this is becoming more and more important in the world as information becomes harder and harder to trust as true and correct. So all of us really are going to need to do some amount of research, possibly a lot presently and in the future. But at this current juncture, if you want to know what's actually happening in the world on almost any level about anything, you need to be able to do some level of research in a way that's going to be able to give you correct information that's not readily available at this point. It's not that the information isn't available, it's just that you really have to know where to go to get it. And it's just a question of discernment. You're flooded with all this information, and some of it is correct and some of it isn't, but it's being able to tell the difference of which is correct and which isn't, which is going to take a little bit of research to do. Eventually, over time, over many years, you can really develop an ability to be able to do it quickly, and to maybe to sometimes be able to tell without doing the research, just because you have so much experience with it. But the way to start on that road is to take a class in how to do research. I highly recommend that. Another thing is, when you're writing things, when you're writing papers, putting together proposals, whatever you're writing for college, especially if you're writing something that's lengthy, something of several pages or more, it could be a research paper, could be a lot of different things. But one thing that can be really helpful is, especially if you get overloaded, because there can be, especially in grad school, there can be a lot of work to do. There can be more work than is possible. So one thing that I did was to kind of repurpose my papers. So save everything you write, and you're not using somebody else's, you're not using an AI, but you can use yourself. So save every single thing you ever write for college that you can. And then when you're in another class, you can repurpose it, go through, change a bit of it, and use it again. And that'll save you a lot of time of having to write new things from scratch every time. Also, what I found, when you have a lot of time and you have plenty of time to do things, you can go about things the right time. But sometimes in college you get overwhelmed, and in order to get things done at all, you've got to do some shortcuts. And one of those shortcuts is to, repurposing, of course, to reuse that. And you can also just kind of, while you're doing that, you can take something and just move things around, change the wording of things, make sure it doesn't look like the same paper, but and that it isn't really, and expand on some areas you didn't expand on in the original paper. You can also combine. Sometimes you can combine different papers, like take two of them and combine them into one, and then it becomes a different thing. So that can be useful. The other thing you can do is that students often will try and pad their papers if it has to be 15 pages to put, move the margins and make lots of blank space. I wouldn't advise to do that. Don't make it 13-point font. Don't move the margins so it looks bigger. I mean, just leave the type the right size, leave the margins correct. Don't put a lot of giant spaces in there, because then it's obvious that you're trying to stretch the paper out. If you want to do that, do it smart. Put in graphics and pictures. That will take up space, but it's valuable space. So you're not just making it look like more than it is. You're making it more than it is. So I would put in charts and graphs and things, whatever kind of pictures, whatever you can. And that way you can make it pages and pages longer, but you're not cheating and kind of making it look bigger. You're adding value to it. You're adding something to it that will help it be a better paper, but make it longer at the same time. And then that's also less extensive writing you have to do. So that's a much better way to look at that. If you've written a bunch of text and you look at it and it's 4 pages short or 3 pages short or something, a few pictures and graphs can take up quite a bit of space. So, and also put in your references and your endnotes. Don't forget about doing that, because that also is space. I mean, sometimes, depending on the professor, they don't count that as space, but sometimes it is. So that's a much better way to go about that. And if you're in a situation where they're giving you tests, like written tests and things that you have to do in class, which is more common in undergrad work, then it does help to study right before. I found that because you're going to retain this information for so long, and most of it you're not going to retain for years or anything. It seems like you're waiting to the last minute. I'm not saying don't study before. You study before, but really I find that it's the stuff that you read, write down whatever the answers are going to be, is best what you're supposed to be studying. Write it down in concise form, like as if you're giving a speech. So bullet point it, put it on your own sheet. Just the act of writing it down like that will help you learn it quite a bit. But you want it in this concise form that you can go through fairly quickly. Could be on cards, could be on a sheet of paper, whatever works best for you. And then study it like right before you walk in the door. Just be reading it as you're walking across the campus. Read it on your way up the elevator. Just read right before, because you'll retain it for a few minutes. So if you study it right before that happens, you'll retain more. So stuff that you studied the day before, it's not as good. And even the morning of, it's like you want to get it, the stuff. I'm not saying not to study those times, but when you really will tend to do well on things is when you study, that last few minutes before the class begins. You can really get a bunch of information in at that point. And if the test is going to be unknown questions, then you can look up examples of what types of questions are going to appear on a test of that sort. Exactly what. Now I'm going to talk about junior college. So junior college, as we know, you can go there for 2 years and then transfer to a 4-year university. But there's a lot of other benefits in junior college. And some people will go there first, as I said, but you can also go for continuing education, not just if you're an administrator or a teacher, but anyone can. So it is the greatest resource. I know that there's community colleges all over the country. I know that I've only gone to ones in California, but I know that the ones in California are incredibly inexpensive, almost free in some cases. There's just a small fee, and you can take so many different classes. It really has a lot of benefits. I took yoga when I was into yoga. I could go to a yoga studio and have to pay whatever, $30, $50 per time, or I could pay, a very small amount, far less than $100, maybe. I can't remember the exact fee, and it does change, but definitely under $100 for a semester, and go for a whole semester and get 14, 15 weeks. And I took one that was 3 classes a week. So I'm going to 45 classes for, maybe under $1 a class. So that's really inexpensive. And strangely, I went to some fairly well-respected and well-rated yoga schools in the area and different yoga studios, quite a few different ones. So I have a really good sampling. And really, the teacher I had at City College was probably the best one. The only downside would be, it's in a gymnasium and there's usually a fairly large number of people. I think my class had maybe 30 people in it or something like that. In a yoga studio, you might only have 10 people in there. But the instructor was really great, and she really knew what she was doing, and it was just a fantastic yoga class. And I took it for several semesters, for a few years. I just kept retaking it. So for little to no cost, I was really getting a huge benefit. Another thing I did was take EMT classes. So I was, get first responder training, and I was interested in that. So it's something I, have gotten to use since then. And it was just a great thing to do. I had never acted before, and I took some acting classes there, and that really expanded. I met some people, and this was in my, I did most of this in my 40s, and it was really, really great. I took a lot of classes there. But there's so many things. You can take weight training classes, so you can use the gym. They have pretty good facilities there too. So there's all kinds of sports you can take, and weight training, and martial arts. I still haven't gotten around to doing that. They actually have a kung fu class and all kinds of different martial arts and health classes there that you can take. But also you could take whatever else if you're interested in history or this or that. It really doesn't matter. But then there's a nursing program there. And for most of these classes, you don't have to be admitted to any special program to take them. So there's just this huge array of classes of things you can take. A lot in the sports and health area, but also you could take a writing class or a speech class or just anything you ever want to do. Browse through the catalog and see what you're interested in. And it really, if you have some extra time or if you have something you've always wanted to do, it's right there. That acting class I took really just changed my life. And it was fantastic. I met a bunch of actors. I met some filmmakers. They also have filmmaking classes there as well. And then they have equipment for the film. So if you maybe want to make like an independent film of some sort, you can take the class there, and you can use the professional film equipment to make films. You can also do radio there as well. So I can't overstate how much of a community resource it is, a community college. And if you simply sign up, ahead of time at the beginning of the semester, there's really a lot to offer. The libraries are generally more extensive and, more comfortable than the public libraries. So you also can use that. And some of the campuses are really nice. It's just in a, kind of in an era in a country when there's not a lot of public services for for citizens. This is one of the best ones because contains so many other services within it. So I just have had incredible experiences there. Also, I've been to I have 3 master's degrees. I've been to a few different universities. I've been to a few different community colleges. And what I've noticed is there's more of a focus on teaching in the community college. At the universities, there's, the publish or perish thing. So a lot of, depending on the university, if it's just like a state university, this might not be as much the case, but certainly with things that are higher up, certainly at Ivy League schools or things like that, the professors may not be focused on teaching, so they may not even be there very often. I mean, in some classes, if you go to a premier school, you may only see your professor once or twice in a semester, if you're lucky. The TAs teach all the classes. So, but at community college, the instructor is there, they teach you, and a lot of them really care about teaching. So if you actually want an education, like people talk about this, but this isn't really what happens at college. The main focus is not amassing information and an education, it's other things. So, but if you actually want that, community college can be great. It's not as big on the social end, but if you actually want to learn things, that's the place to go. Which seems counterintuitive. You'd think these really expensive universities would be better, but really, you can probably learn more at a community college. It was certainly the case in my experience at the universities and community colleges I've been to over the years. So I highly recommend community college for if you want an education, but also just as a community resource. There's so many things there. And if you're looking for some kind of information, you want to learn something or practice something, or you just can't get your exercise schedule down, or and you can't get as healthy as you want to because of whatever reasons, your schedule, or you can't commit to it, it's a good place to go to start doing that as well. So that's a little bit of what I've learned about college and university throughout my life. Thank you for spending the time with me on What Nobody Tells You. If you found this helpful, please subscribe and follow, and you won't miss future episodes. For new episodes and updates, you can also join the Substack email list. There'll be a link in the description. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode.